Hi, this is Ang Lee. I'm joined by Edward Berger, the director, the wonderful director of this wonderful movie, Conclave. I just saw it. Congratulations. Um, I remember you vaguely from the Good Machine days. Good Machine is the precursor of Focus, who released this movie. Uh, we were much, much younger. That was when I
Yeah,
was sensibility, if I'm correct.
that was 30 years ago.
30
Yeah,
years ago,
and I remember,
young assistant.
yeah, I remember I worked on the post-production and the prep and the post-production of Sense and Sensibility. And one day I hand carried the negative to of a rain shot to LA for VFX, and so this feels like a circle that's closing. Thank you so much, Eng, for jumping on the call for me and showing interest in the film.
I'm
Means a
so
lot.
happy for you. I'm so happy for you.
And Glenn, Glenn, I was working with Glenn Basner back then, who
Yeah.
produced a movie with us and released and sold it around the world, and so it's a real circle.
Um, Congratulations on all the success and congratulations on this wonderful movie. It's intense. Um,
Thank you so much. I learned, you know what? I tried to look how you do it and try to learn from your films, studying them for years, watching them over and over again. And just one anecdote about back then, I was offered a position on the Ice Storm. And I remember I was making $400 a week back then, and you couldn't really survive that well on $400 a week. And Anthony Bregman, the wonderful Anthony Bregman, who I'm sure you know, still
yes, of
know,
course.
he said, "Let's go to lunch, Edward." And he knew I always wanted to be a director. I always wrote it in my notes and said, "I want to be a director. I want to do what Ang does." Yeah. And so he offered me, I don't know, production supervisor or something on the Ice Storm. And I had done the budget with Anthony, and that position paid $2,500 a week. So it's a 600% increase in salary, a lot more money. And I was afraid to ask about that salary because I didn't want to make it about money. But so I stuttered and said, eventually I said to Anthony, like, and the budget, it says like that salary, and who would be making that? And Anthony said, well, you, of course, we should, Ang is making bigger movies. We should all earn more money. It's industry standard. And I didn't hesitate for a second. And I said, I can't do it. And Anthony
Very
said,
direct.
I was hoping you would say that because he knew I would today not be sitting here with you. Once you take that hand, you can't let go. So it was like a really decisive moment for me, and I learned so much in those years.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Good for you. So happy you did that.
yeah, it's these little moments that you decide, and that also, I mean, I can tell you a little bit about Conclave, how it started.
Hmm.
Tessa Ross, another wonderful producer, called me and said, "I think I have a script for you." And she had sent me a couple scripts before, and I never liked them. And I said, "Tessa, those are not for me." And then she said, "But I can tell you, this one is written by Peter Strawn, and I love Peter. He's a really wonderful writer. You would love him." And because he's got so much soul, and there's always a second layer in his script. It's not the plot that's doesn't matter where this movie takes place and actually who becomes Pope. It's secondary. But the what's underneath it, that in this case, the sense of doubt that Rafe feels, and that his is interior arc, sort of his sort of quest for certainty. And that drove me. I read that speech that Rafe does, and I immediately thought Peter has put his soul into this film, and I want to try to do justice to that. And
Which speech? Many great speech from him. And the man is
Rafe,
like one of the best speaker.
Yeah, yeah. Rafe is wonderful. Yeah, yeah. That's exactly what he does. But he doesn't talk that much in the film. It's much more about what he's thinking.
Right.
And he has that one speech about certainty and about embracing doubt. And that's what really, I read that speech and I thought, I want to do this film. And the same for Rafe. He read the speech and thought, called me and said, "What are you interested in? Are you interested in let's call it a detective story, what I find out about who becomes Pope and who has what in his backstory? Or are you interested in his interior journey?" And I said, "Of course, I'm interested in what he's feeling, in his doubts, and I hope I can capture that whatever you play with the camera."
That's wonderful. In a way, it is intrigue, it's thriller. But more importantly, it's character study and um, this internal journey.
Yeah,
Not just for that particular character, but everybody in that building who's voting, and eventually all of us. Um,
yeah,
yeah. So it's
yeah.
a
It's so
very
much about
universal movie. I'm sure it touches so many levels of all kinds of um, audience, young or old, and here and abroad. Uh, can you tell us how the movie affected people, affected you and the people and the characters?
yeah. It's really interesting, when you make this movie.
The Pope is like a symbol.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
really the choice we make here.
It's the choice we make here, and he's the man with the most purity, and the most innocence, and the biggest, almost, yeah, purity is the best word. And in terms of
Partly
affecting,
by purity or honesty.
yeah, absolutely. You know how it is, it's the same for anybody, directors, CEOs, cardinals. Cardinal is a pretty big job. There's only what 150 in the world maximum. So they've studied, they've dedicated their lives to this. It's like a handful of directors, basically. And none of them, they started out as priests, as small directors, making personal films, and then they get promoted. They get bigger budgets and more people to entertain and more people to educate and more people to preach to and more people to manage. And with that promotion comes, I guess, corruption, of your early ideals. And everyone's kind of lost their deal. Even Rafe has lost his compass.
Mm.
And
Poli-
excuse me?
Politics.
Yeah, politics, yeah.
Yeah.
And power and money and all these things. And with him, we realize, he's preserved his sense of purpose of why he started in the first place.
Uh,
I had an interesting, it was the same for me. I wanted to make movies. I left the ice storm and made my first film. And then in Germany, it's very difficult to make theatrical movies. And so you sort of make television and, you know, earn your living and found a family and all these things. And at some point, I realized I lost the reason why I knocked on Good Machine's door and wanted to make these type of films. I lost that compass of wanting to make the right choice, wanting to make the right film. And bit by bit, with all these television movies, you make one compromise after another, and you don't even notice. And from one day to the next, I said, don't want to do this anymore. I started making these films again about 10 years ago, really hard, like again, like sort of saying no to money and just saying, okay, let's do these personal films and fight through them. And that's kind of what led me to Conclave, and sort of just staying true to where you have something to say and where you have a sense of purpose with your film.
it happened to me many times while I'm making the movies, even day-to-day lives of shooting movies. You get pulled in so many directions. You have to make so many choices, most of them practical choices. And then one day, sometimes I have to ask myself, what is the purpose of making this movie? Is to finish making it, make it okay, or I want to make a good movie?
Yeah.
It's very easy to lose that compass, so to speak.
Yeah, every day on a film, and you ask how this film affected people. While you make it, you have no idea. You think like people are gonna, is this gonna be interesting? Probably not. People are probably gonna be, what can I do to make it interesting? And Peter was sitting actually next to me on set, Peter Strawn, the writer. And so many times I turned to him, are we on the right track? Can I do something better? Am I missing anything? And once in a while, he pointed me in a direction, and it was really helpful to just to not lose your compass and not to start thinking, oh, I got to make things more interesting, do fancy things with the camera and start building a crane and all these things or walk around with the actor. No, it's so much about the quietness of it and trusting in that. And when you do that, and you have dialogue scene after dialogue scene or look after look and quiet scene, you think you lose it's very hard to to keep believing in it. And sometimes you get tempted to go a different track, but yeah, as much as you can stay true to that inner focus why you wanted to make the movie in the first place, and then you make it and you never know how people are going to respond, right? And until the premiere you don't know, it's just you and the producer and the editor and the composer, a
Mhm.
handful of people watching it, and then suddenly there's the premiere and people say, oh, I like this is interesting. So it's a big relief, but you never know. Yeah.
I found while making the movie, the easiest place to get lost is directing actors,
Yeah.
talking about pulling each every direction. Script, it has a structure. It's easy
Yeah.
to give a structure. Keep a linear thinking, cause and effect. Script
Yeah.
has a cause and effect. But actors and different actors, especially giving some of the great actors, they pull in every direction. You get lost in their uh is that performance, their flavor, their vibes
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
That's when things really happens, when you see actors perform. Whether
Yeah.
they're genuine or they're just doing performances, try to when they try to work with each other, work with you, or they actually feeling something that
Yeah.
speaks for the movies. So let's talk about your actors. First of all, Ralph, great actors. How do you land it on him? How no?
Well, it was pretty, we didn't decide on in the original novel and the original script that character is Italian. And then of course it's very hard to finance a movie with an actor we don't know and or who's only locally known and so forth. So you need someone with some stature, but we were very open for where that person could come from. Could be from anywhere in the world as long as they were believably Catholic. Um, and so at some point, I woke up after 3 years of development or so. I woke up and I suddenly thought, this character is not the person who seeks the limelight, who wants to. He's not an alpha. He doesn't want to be Pope. He's the quiet guy in the background, the manager, the reluctant man. He doesn't even want to be there. He wants to be in a monastery. And so you need someone who invites us into their soul, into their interior, where we can see behind his eyes
Mhm.
and yeah, and see what he's thinking, because he a lot of times he's observing while the others are talking. And Rafe came to mind. I thought I can always tell what he's thinking. And he makes himself so bare. And so I just called him and he read it within a week, and then we met, and then he made that call, and what are you interested in? The interior life or the detective story? And then we just decided, let's do it. And it's interesting, for example, Stanley Tucci he's very opposite to Rafe in terms of character. He's much more, he's American. Rafe is British, Rafe is a bit more thinking, and Stanley just does it. And And on set, when you have Rafe, who's very intense and thinking, and Stanley just, he sort of shakes it out. Yeah, it just comes so easy, it seems. Probably, I mean, that probably not, but it just on the surface, it seems so easy. Sometimes I looked at him and I thought, like, he's not doing anything. He's not doing enough. Look at Rafe, he's really working hard, and Stanley's not. It's just so effortless. It can't be. And I went to him a couple times and I said, Stanley, I think you should, think about this. And do you want to try this a little bit more with anger or inside? And he said, oh, I had anger inside, but I'll do it again. And I saw it and I watched it and I thought, like, he's still not doing it. And with Stanley, it's a magical thing. You don't see it and you feel like an idiot because you stand in front of him and you look at him and he does nothing. And you come to the editing room and you realize
It's there.
it's it's all there. It comes with such confidence of that all he needs to do is feel it and think it, and then it's going to be there. And it was so magic that he just revealed it in, yeah, in his, in on screen, but not in real life. And that was beautiful.
And Diaz?
Carlos is from Mexico. We found him in Vancouver. In the book, he's from the Philippines. We looked in the Philippines, we looked in Indonesia, we looked in all the countries that are Catholic in Asia, and but also South America immediately. South America, Central America, Asia. Those were the countries we were focusing on because we wanted an actor from one of those countries that we hadn't had yet. That's a wonderful thing about the Conclave. It's so international. People come from all over the world. Africa, Europe, America, Asia, South America. So that's that, you can find all these great actors all over the world and listen to the timbre of their voices. And it's almost like a symphony. You hear Lucian speaking in his accent and Sergio Castellito speaking Italian. And so, oh, I can tell you a nice story about Sergio in a second. But Carlos is a non-actor. He hasn't acted before. I mean, on film, he's learned it recently. He's an architect by nature. He lives in Vancouver, and eventually he sent in a tape, and we saw it, and I thought, oh, he's interesting because he has that gentleness, that quietness, that peacefulness, that
Innocent.
innocent, sensitive. Yeah, in
Decided on a name eventually. Innocence.
yeah, exactly. And that touched me. And that speech that he does in the end
Really
about
contrasts to the other actors.
absolutely. Yeah,
Made, made him
no
stand
cunning,
out.
no second agenda. It's just straight and honest. And he gave in the casting. I flew him to Rome and met him there, and we worked for a couple hours and looked at and he did that speech that he does in the end, where he's basically revealing who he is and what is inside of him and where he comes from and sort of. And that's a very difficult speech to do. I wanted someone who we don't know because any actor we've seen in Breaking Bad or Sopranos or something, you suddenly go like, I don't believe him, like he's not, that can't be true.
Acting. They're
I've seen
acting.
him, he's acting it. And with Carlos, it felt like I wanted someone that the audience doesn't know, that the other Cardinals doesn't know, that comes into this world completely innocent of our associations and himself. And I just looked into his eyes while he did that speech and I thought, I believe him. I think that could be true. I think it could be true that he has a uterus and female organs and not everybody can do that. You don't believe it about everyone. And that was the main thing with Carlos.
And I found that watching the movie, because that's the climax of the movie. Not only I believe him, I let go.
Mm.
It's like so
Good,
sure.
good.
Oh, it's like,
Yeah, good, good, fantastic.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
You didn't make a fuss about it, but of course you
yeah.
pay attention. It's an intense scene. Is any moment when you direct an actor in this movie, you feel like you have the taste of the movie? Like, can you share some experience?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is there a moment when you direct any of those actors, particularly Ralph, who carries the movie, that while you're doing it or when you're editing it, you see something?
Yeah, it's probably
The
it,
vibe, like this is the movie, this is the taste of the movie. A good movie should have a taste. It's
yeah,
not in the content, it's not in this and that as people think it is. It should have a taste that you cannot articulate it. As a director, you're sensitive to it. Is there like a moment? Give us an example that you just like
it is in
hang on to it, the movie exists.
it is in Rafe's close-ups. Whenever I put the camera on him, and it was weird because, let's say in the Sistine Chapel when they're voting, it's all about the looks, and I
Right.
I hang it on Rafe's. Obviously, he sees everyone, and he always got like five close-ups, one from here. I call that a close-up too, or one from here, and then one in this axis, one in that axis, and everyone else only got one. Yeah, and because it's all about his perspective. uh, and and in his eyes, I found that's where I can rest. Yeah, that's where I've thought if this movie is going to be anything, it's going to be in Rafe's thinking. Yeah, and so it's totally reliant on him, and we followed with the camera what he. I always said, I mean, I really like planning. I really need a very concrete plan and shot list, and sometimes storyboards for certain things. So I really want to know what I'm doing, but when Rafe comes, or when anybody comes, Stanley and Lucian, when they all come, John Lithgow, when they all come, um, I just follow them first. I ask them, let's see what you're doing, and let's rehearse, and then we adjust, and I put the camera according to. And very often, Rafe would do something and I'd see, oh, he plays it this way. I didn't expect that. So it needs another shot for that. Or I can do it all in one shot, because he does it this way. So why don't I um, rest my camera on, or why don't I add a shot to so that the audience can understand that?
Um, and it's just lucky to have actors like that.
Oh yeah, it's everything. Oh, by the way, there's a wonderful actor, Sergio Castellitto, the Italian guy.
Oh,
Um, the vaping, and so he's so he was so great. And I was looking for an Italian actor who could speak English, so we could, you know, communicate, and the lines were all in English mostly.
mhm.
And he said, and everybody told him, of course, Sergio can speak English. And I didn't want, it's very hard in Italy to find a man at age 70 who speaks good English. They're all great in Italian and French and other languages, but English is difficult for 70-year-old men in Italy. And I heard, and I didn't want, the people who were all in Bond, the two actors that speak English in Italy, they were all in a Bond movie. So I thought, like, let's find the other Italian actor, not the Bond actor. So I found Sergio, and I was told, yes, he speaks great English. I meet him and he speaks a little bit of English. I say, oh, yeah, he'll manage. And of course, in the read through, doesn't speak a word of English. It's all Italian, which was a real blessing, except that all the producers came after the read through. It was a great read through, but he's got to speak more English. And I said, too late. We cast him. He's not going to learn it. Yeah. Don't worry, but it really, it egged Rafe on, who had a little bit of Italian in the movie, to say, oh, if he speaks it all in Italian, I got to speak more Italian. And that's how this much Italian and Latin is in the movie,
I
because
think,
of
yeah.
Sergio, because he couldn't speak English, and I'm really grateful for it.
Hmm. And your camera captures it so well. I found your lighting quite unique.
Yeah.
I like your lighting, the camera work. The two things that really stand out. One's your camera work, particularly in lighting. Of course, you do the framing, so you can capture those great actors in different angles. The other is the art department. In a
Oh,
way,
great.
you visualize this internal journey, that unique yet universal uh, journey of people making choices, that art and everything. No, it's the cardinal, so there's a stoicism to it. It's stoic, but
Yeah.
it's also so crazily expressive. The contrast, the color palette is just crazy. Uh, Talk about those two, how you light it and frame
Well,
it,
I
and
was,
also the art department.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had great collaborators. Stéphane Fontaine is, he did a lot of films for Jacques Audiard. He shot Jackie, and he shot the film Ammonite, and he always did it beautifully intuitive. You know that he cares about the actors. And he's a very humble person who takes himself back and who actually steps back behind the camera and says, it's
Mhm.
all about them. I'm just a storyteller. And that's how he lights, very naturally, very unintrusive, not showy. He doesn't want to show off. He's a quiet, humble man who disappears behind the movie. And I think you feel that in his camera. Always, the story and the actors are always in the foreground. He
Yeah,
doesn't want to be the guy who draws attention, and
actors always look good.
yeah, and
Best
that
part, yeah.
there's a great sensitivity,
Yeah.
to his camera work. And the lighting he did beautifully. We very often you see these pictures, and a lot of the times the churches are, the beams of light come in and there's a lot of smoke in the air and you see these beams, and we just didn't want to do that. We wanted to have like a very subdued, minimal, quite dark lighting and get away with as little light as possible, as much darkness as possible, as much, you know because
Internal. Yeah.
yeah, and because it's called conclave. They're all locked in, they're all, sequestered, they have no contact to the outside, and that's represented in the lighting. Everything is, all the shutters are down, it's always dark. And that also is represented in the production design. For example, I knew I was going to shoot in the Sistine Chapel, which is, obviously an ecclesiastical building. So I felt the other building that we built is the Casa Santa Marta, the hotel where the cardinals live. And that is and I thought, like, okay, and the real Casa Santa Marta looks terrible. You don't want to build it. It looks ugly. And I thought, I don't want to
They
shoot
don't
in there.
look like a real thing.
Yeah, so
The
if we
art.
build it, if we spend money on it, why don't we build a nice thing? And we went with the idea of building a prison, basically. No windows. The rooms are very bare, only marble, and it's hot, it's cold. And all you hear when the doors close, it just sucks the air out of the room, and all you hear is the hum of the fluorescent and the breathing of Rafe. So that by the end, when the shutters go up, and the light comes in and he opens the window and the air comes in and we can breathe, life comes back and you feel relieved as the audience. And actually that last shot, you asked about the taste of the movie. That
Mm.
last shot was very important. It's three women laughing, three nuns laughing, dressed in white, innocence again, and the future in a way. And that came to me because my costume designer Lizzie Crystal showed me a picture. Costumes are also very important. I'll tell you in a second. Showed me a picture of three nuns in white walking through Rome, and they were, and I thought that should be the last shot, because that it just looked beautiful. And by the way, those robes. So if a lot of people comment on the red, that the red is so strong and so rich. That's not the real cardinal.
That's real, yes.
No, they
Oh,
wear kind of, what they wear is, yes, they wear a red, but it's kind of orangey. And it's a little bit polyester, the fabric. It looks a little bit cheap, actually. And in all the old paintings, in all the Velázquez paintings and the El Greco paintings, you have this rich, deep red. And we thought, why don't we make them like that? They look much better.
almost maroon.
Yeah, in Renaissance, and that makes that rich red and the red carpet in the Sistine Chapel, and so the red was basically the predominant color then. But it's also a lot of tests and lighting tests and fabric tests to find that fabric. And this is one shot when Rafe undresses, where Stefan he was behind him following, and he sort of lingered on the red fabric and caught the red fabric and just stayed there. And it's so delicious. And so he got fascinated with it, just intuitively following it. And I left it in the film because I love that fabric so much.
Editing, movie's gripping, uh, but it's pretty stoic throughout. Minimal music,
Yeah.
intense. Uh,
Yeah.
how do you pacing it in the editing room?
I have a wonderful editor who I'm making another movie with, Nick Emerson, and we basically spent a long time s- actually stripping away shots. Probably the first cut had probably 5 times as many edits. Just, we have a conversation, and now normal thing is Ang shot, Edward shot, go back and forth. And I felt that it's much more interesting if we have a 2-minute conversation. Why don't we just cut 3 times and just stay on Rafe and follow him? And in the decisive moment, cut around to Stanley for the impact of the line and then stay on him, just stay much longer in shots. And I took it from Pakula. I watched a lot of Pakula movies. I thought, we can do sort of a political thriller here, a conspiracy thriller from the 70s, like a parallax view. And I saw that Pakula, for example, Warren Beatty, is with his back to us for 2 minutes in the dark. The star of the movie, producer on the movie, biggest star in the 70s, just in the dark with his back to us for 2 minutes, just talking. And the smaller act, the supporting actor is basically facing us, but it's also tiny, it's in a wide shot. And at the right time, after 2 minutes, Pakula cuts around to mid shot, not even a close up, just a mid shot of Warren Beatty. And I always felt those cuts had such amazing impact. They were so accurate and so precise that I thought I wanted to try that, like have a movie that is as precise as possible, like razor sharp.
Yeah, wonderful. Uh, Finally, what is faith for you?
Faith? Um, I'm always interested in faith. Um, I'm I don't go to church or temple or synagogue or mosque. I but I try to look within, and I try to look, I try to I believe, but I don't need an institution to go. I always felt when I ever went to church at Christmas and so forth, I always felt it didn't inspire me. I didn't take anything from it. And I so I went and found it, tried to find it more in myself and my family.
Well, it's a wonderful movie, and it finds its audience. It shares a piece of your heart and your doubt.
Yeah.
Um,
And that always comes also
and your
in,
choice, and your choice. That's influential.
yeah. It always comes while, I mean, I'm sure I mean, I know movie making also is a little bit the same thing. It comes with so many doubts because no one knows how to make it. If we all knew how to make it, we all would have great movies.
Yeah,
But
if you know, that's how I feel. If you know, it's boring.
yeah, and when you make a decision, you're still only 51% sure, because it might be the other way too. But let's go in that direction. And that's the magic somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it's like choosing the Pope. Um,
A little bit. Yeah. Mm.
uh, but it's wonderful to see your movies, and see the arc developing as a filmmaker. Uh,
Um, you were a great teacher, And I learned so much from your movies. I hopefully learned so much from you, and this means a lot that I can talk to you today.
Be modest. The admiration is mutual.
Oh,
I'm
thank
so
you.
happy to see you. So good to see you smile.
Thank you so much. You too.
Yeah. Well, take care. Continue the great work.
Thank you so much. You too, please.